And welcome back to the Jamie Ross Show. I'm joined today by Tricia Tunstall, and this is her latest book called Changing Lives, with Gustavo Dudamel, El Sistema, is that how you pronounce it?
Sistema?
El Sistema, and the Transformative Power of Music. So let's start by, how did you get involved with this
subject? With
Sistema. Is that where it started, and then
yes. Yes, it started with my finding out about Gustavo Dudamel, who is a very charismatic young conductor who has been increasingly well known in the States and in the world. He's from Venezuela, and he was appointed 3 years ago to be the conductor of the Los Angeles Philharmonic at the incredible age of 27. So he was very much in the news. I heard about him, and in 2009, 2008, I went to hear him conduct in Carnegie Hall. So that was my first window into this world.
Okay.
He was such an amazing, charismatic, electric conductor. And those are sort of easy words to say, but with him, they meant something really unusual. It's a power of communication that he has with the musicians and with the audience. And also a kind of transparent, sheer joy in what he's doing that I had never really seen before since I had seen Leonard Bernstein many years ago. Right. And so he was very exciting to me, and I decided I had to find out more about him.
Oh, and how did he get to that level? I mean, there's such a Dudamel Fever, it's and you never expect that from classical music.
Well, you don't expect. No, you don't. It's really something like a rock star.
Yeah,
it's true.
It is.
And I think that the reason he's become so celebrated in the United States is that he has brought a kind of new excitement to something that people have sort of written off as, well, that's old-fashioned and that's passé, and he comes to it absolutely fresh. But not only that, he is famous because of who he is, but he's also famous because of where he comes from, which is really the subject of the book.
Right.
He comes from an extraordinary program in Venezuela called El Sistema, which is a massive countrywide, nationwide program of total immersion for poor children, total immersion in orchestral music.
Right.
If you can imagine such a thing.
Yeah.
In that corner of the world where we don't really expect that.
Yeah.
And it's been going on for 36 years.
Wow.
It began 36 years ago by a remarkable visionary man, is still led by this man. And what it has grown into is a system where hundreds of thousands of children in Venezuela every day for many hours play classical symphonic music in orchestras together. And I'm talking about 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 18-year-olds. More children play classical music in Venezuela than play soccer.
Wow, really?
Yes.
Huh. So,
yes.
Yeah,
so that's where Dudamel came from.
Yeah, I didn't realize the program was 36 years already.
Yeah.
I mean, and it started, what's the total number of people involved?
Well, right now there are about 370,000 children in it currently every day. Right. So you think about that, and then you think about you think about the 35 years before then, it wasn't always on that scale, but the hundreds of thousands of children for many years have been coming through the system. So it's been remarkable and really transformative for Venezuelan culture. Right. Classical music is really an integral part of many ordinary Venezuelans' lives in a way that it never would have been.
Wow.
So, and the idea of this program is more than just bringing classical music to people who wouldn't have heard it or played it otherwise. The basic idea of this program is really, I think, I would almost call it revolutionary. It's the idea that music education of this kind of intensity is not only artistically important, but it's socially transformative.
Right.
So what's going on is not only an act of artistic education, but real social transformation. And that was the vision that this founder had. His name is Jose Antonio Abreu. And Maestro Abreu had this vision very long ago that music education, arts education, and particularly orchestral immersion education could cause transformation not only for children but for their parents and for whole communities, and could actually disrupt the cycles of despair and dysfunction that poverty causes.
Wow.
And so in that way could actually fight poverty.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just amazing when you think even here, like, music programs are getting cut.
Yes.
And you just, like, it's so, people don't realize the power of it.
No, it's right.
And
it's thought of as a frill.
Yeah.
It's a nice frill, but it's not necessary. It's not on the NJ Ask tests that are being taken by Maplewood children today. It's not on the SATs.
Right.
It's not. It's it's a soft subject.
Right.
This takes a whole other view of it. This takes a view of arts education as profoundly serious and socially imperative.
Yeah.
We don't think of it that way.
And how did he come to choose classical music? Why not music of the culture? Like,
well, it's a great question.
Yeah.
He came to this idea when he was a young musician in Caracas in 1975. He was educated as both a musician and an economist. And he was a passionately accomplished and very well-schooled musician. He was a violinist and a pianist, an organist. He was also a trained economist who had done graduate work at the University of Michigan. So he brought this whole combination of attributes to this moment. And the moment was that in Caracas in 1975, there were several conservatories of music that were training young Venezuelans in classical music. But there was absolutely no place for them to play once they got out. There were symphony orchestras in Caracas, and they were almost 100% populated by foreign musicians.
Right.
Musicians from North America, musicians from Europe. There was almost nowhere or no way for a young Venezuelan musician who loved classical music to play. And Abreu ardently loved classical music.
Right.
So he decided to change this. And his first act of change was to form an orchestra, a youth orchestra of young Venezuelans to play classical music. And at that time, in that place, it was a rebellious act.
Yeah.
Because art music, classical music, was in Venezuela at that time really belonged to the upper class, to the elite. It was played for the elite, it was played by the elite and by the foreign-born. There was no access to it for ordinary Venezuelans. And so his first act of rebellion was to say, classical music belongs to the people. And so let's form a Venezuelan orchestra to play this classical music to prove that Venezuelans can do this. So that's why it was classical music in the beginning.
Okay.
And then I think he came to feel that the orchestra experience was really the perfect artistic experience for the kind of social change that he was looking for. Because an orchestra, he said, is like a perfect community. And if you learn to play well in an orchestra, then you have really learned to be a citizen, a good citizen in a community.
Wow.
So that was the vision that he was.
Yeah, and it's just fantastic that it was able to grow.
It was able to grow because he was being a trained economist and also a very canny politician. He was able to persuade the government to support it, the federal government to support it. And the most important thing he said was that he didn't want it supported as an arts program, he wanted it supported as a social program.
Right.
And that's why it stayed and grew and grew and grew and grew and wasn't able to be cut, which it would have been if it had been an arts program.
Okay. And so now, once Dudamel,
yes,
once he came public, and
he became public because he was the conductor of the youth orchestra of Venezuela, which Abreu had founded, but then had grown to become a really superb, world-class group of young musicians. And Dudamel became their conductor at the age of 18, and very shortly thereafter began to tour the world with them, and so the world began to take notice.
So after the world took notice, did that really raise the amount of kids that went into the program? Did that like expand the program as much as his popularity?
It probably helped. Yeah. It probably helped. I mean, the Venezuelan government was very pleased every time the young musicians went on tour and got such positive press for Venezuela. I think that was a very favorable thing in the government's eyes, and so that probably helped the government in its resolve to keep this program and expand this program.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So then he came to the attention of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and they decided they had to have him as conductor.
Right.
And he, I think, was being courted by a number of orchestras in this country and maybe in other countries as well. He chose Los Angeles for many reasons, I think. But one reason was that it had such a large Latino population, which really spoke to him. And because Los Angeles as an orchestra was so willing to start an El Sistema program there in Los Angeles. And that was one of his conditions for coming.
That's one of his conditions. Well, let's just take a quick break. I think we have a little more to talk about here.
Okay.
But we'll just take a little break and be right back with Tricia.
Sounds good.
And Changing Lives.